Today we're going to be discussing the resurrection of the dead. Question everybody asks. And we're going to go through all, pretty much, not all, but most of the ideas of the resurrection of the dead, so we're going to understand what's going on over here. The resurrection of the dead, when, who, where, how is it going to happen?
What wife? If you married 3 wives, which one?
Even that we're going to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it says like this. We're going to start on page number 3. This is the end of the Rambam. We just finished the cycle of the Rambam, and this is what it says in the end of the Rambam. Beit HaMikdash kodem lekibutz galuyot. First, Mashiach is going to build the temple, and then he's going to gather the exiles. And then it continues, Kibbutz galuyot kodem letchiyat hametim. The bringing over the exiles, that comes before the resurrection of the dead. And then it continues, 40 shana kodem hakibbutz galuyot letchiyat hametim. What's the difference between them? So first the temple is going to be built, then all the Jews are going to come to Israel. 40 years later, it's going to be resurrection of the dead. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Mashiach is already there when he builds the temple. That's already Mashiach.
So
Yeah.
call the Mashiach, then building of the temple.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you know he's Mashiach because he built the temple. Okay.
Beit HaMikdash.
Yeah. So let's look at source number 1. This is from the Zohar itself. Source number 1. Ditnan, it says, Beit HaMikdash kodem lekibutz galuyot. The temple is before the gathering of the exiles. Kibbutz galuyot kodem letchiyat hametim. Gathering of the exile is before the resurrection of the dead. V'tchiyat hametim hu achron shebechulן. And tchiyat hametim, the resurrection of the dead, is going to be the last part, the last thing. Minayin lanu. It says, how do we know this? The Zohar asks. How do we know this is going to be the way? So it says, Dechtiv, because it says, Bonei Yerushalayim, there's a verse in the Psalms. King David says, Bonei Yerushalayim, he builds Yerushalayim. Bonei Yerushalayim Hashem, he builds Yerushalayim God. Nidchei Yisrael yekanes, then it says he's going to gather all the exiles. And then it says, Harofeh leshvurei lev umechabes le'atzvotam. He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their worries. So it says, what do you mean? How does he heal them? How does he bandages the warning? Zoi tchiyat hametim. It says, this is the resurrection of the dead. So it says, how does it take care of sadness? Shehia refuah leshvurei lev, because this is the medicine for people with broken hearts. How? Al metehem. It says because they're going to revisit with the old people who passed away. The grandfathers, the parents. Bonei Yerushalayim tchila. So first he builds the Beit HaMikdash, Bonei Yerushalayim v'acharav nidchei Yisrael, and then he's going to gather the exiles. V'harofeh leshvurei lev achron al hakol. And the last sentence in the psalm is that he's going to heal our hearts. How? By seeing our loved ones. That's how we're going to heal our hearts. That's the explanation of the Zohar. Let's continue on page number 4. Again, this is from Maimonides. Hamelech HaMashiach, King Mashiach, Atid la'amod ve'la'achzir malchut David le'yashna, is going to come and return the old David dynasty to its old glory. La'memshala harishona, to the first kingship. Bonei HaMikdash, he builds a temple, mekabetz et Israel, and then he gathers the Jewish people. The second question, after we got an overall view, what we're going to be dealing with now is how. How is that going to happen? What do you mean how? The number of departed who will return is obviously tremendous. We're going to get millions of people coming out. Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people from all the 3,000 years. Yeah, but it's millions and millions and millions of people. So the question is, are they all going to, one day, you're going to have another billion people on earth just going to appear all of a sudden? How's it going to happen? So let's see. So it says like this, Metei Eretz Yisrael Chaim Tchila. What's going to be happen first? Anybody who's buried in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, he's going to become awakened first. He's going to get resurrected first. Achar kach Metei Chul. Then there are going to be all the people who are passed away outside of the land of Israel, who are buried outside of the land of Israel. And the third part, Ve'achar kach Dor HaMidbar. And the last is the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. The generation that died in the desert. Ve'yesh Omrim, and there's a second opinion that says, who's going to be the last one? The forefathers. They're going to be the last ones. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So let's see. Where do we get this information from? So let's look at Isaiah. What does it say in Isaiah? In Isaiah it says, Ichyu metecha, the dead are going to be alive. And then it continues, Nevlati yekumun, that the corpses are going to rise, the dead people are going to rise. And then the last, it says, Hakitzu v'ranenu shochne afar. Awake and shout for joy those who are put on in the earth. So the Zohar looks at Isaiah and is going to give an explanation of these words. What does the Zohar says? Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Hametim sheba'aretz em chaim tchila. The one who are buried in Israel, they're going to become resurrected first. Zeu shekatuv ichyu metecha. This is what Isaiah says, your dead are going to be alive. Nevlati yekumun. The second part of the verse is the dead people are going to rise up. Ela shebechutz laaretz. These are all the people who are buried outside of the land of Israel. Hakitzu v'ranu shochne afar, elu amitim shebamidbar. And the last part are who? Are the people who died in the desert. Okay, that's what it all says. Veshe'amar Rabbi Yochanan, and this is what Rabbi Yochanan says, Lama met Moshe bechutz laaretz. Why did Moshe died outside of the land of Israel? Moshe, our holiest part, the holiest person that can be, he didn't merit to be buried in Eretz Israel. In other words, he's not going to get resurrected first. Not second, last. He's going to get resurrected last. The last one to get resurrected is Moshe Rabbeinu. So what's going on? So it says, why? How is that fair? So Rabbi Yochanan is going to explain to us how is that fair. So it says, Le'arot lechol b'ei olam. God wanted to show the entire world, Keshem she'atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu le'achayot leMoshe, just like God is going to resurrect Moshe, Kach atid le'achayot ledoro shem kiblu haTorah. Also the generation that received the Torah are also going to get resurrected. Ve'alehem ne'emar, and the truth is, they did such a terrible sin. The generation of the desert says, why are they last? Why are these guys last? It says, because they did such a terrible sin that they actually shouldn't be resurrected. There's the terrible sin that they did, idol worship, for that sin you don't get resurrected. So it says, in actual fact, they shouldn't get resurrected. That's why they're last. Because in actual fact, if the way it's supposed to be, they don't deserve it. They should stay there forever. They shouldn't get resurrected. But God has a soft point, a soft spot in his heart for them. Why does God have a soft spot in his heart for him? V'alehem ne'emar, on this, Yirmiyah says, you know why they're going to get resurrected? Even though they don't deserve it? Even though they don't deserve it, they are going to resurrect. You know why? Zacharti lach, because God says, I remember you guys, chesed ne'uraich, that in the beginning you guys loved me. You were willing to leave Egypt with no food, with no nothing, to walk after me in the desert. You didn't know what's going to happen, and you were still willing. So I have a soft, even though you don't deserve it, I have a soft spot in my heart for you. Ahavat klulotaich. When we were lovers at the beginning, when the two lovers meet, I know that you loved me then, God says. Lechtech acharei bamidbar beretz lo zroa. And how do I know it? Because you went into the desert where there's no water, where there's no food, where there's nothing. Just because you love me so much. So just because of that, I'm going to resurrect you. Rabbi Shimon says, Metei Eretz Israel Chaim Tchila, the dead of the people in Eretz Israel are going to be enlivened first. Metei Chul. And he says then, so there's going to be a disagreement between Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yochanan said that it was, who are the three stages? Land of Israel, out of the land of Israel, and then the generation of the desert. Rabbi Shimon says differently. He says, you're right in the first two. First is going to be the people in Israel. The second is going to be the people in outside of Israel. And third are going to be whom? And then there's going to be Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov. So it says, you think that Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov are not going to get resurrected? Is that what you're going to think? He says, absolutely, you're going to think that way. So he says, why would you think that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are not going to be resurrected? He says, because they're not fully Jewish. Fully becoming Jewish only happened when? After Matan Torah. After the giving of the Torah. Before the giving of the Torah, they were Jews, but not 100% Jewish. So what does it mean, not 100% Jews? We discussed it some other class. So it says, so this is what Rabbi Shimon says. Rabbi Shimon says, since they're not 100% Jews, but they're still going to get resurrected. It's a chidush. So it says, Kedei sheyakitzu v'yeruhu. So he says, why is God going to enliven Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? How come they're going to get resurrected? Because God wants them to be happy. That's what it says. Al simcha bir'otam bnehem. It says, actually, it's not for them, the resurrection of the dead. It's not for Avraham, Yitzchak. But they're going to be so happy seeing the Jewish people get resurrected. God says, I cannot raise them up. I'm going to raise them up so just that they can see that I can watch their happiness when they see when their kids are getting resurrected.
The work that they did, they see all the kids.
Yeah. In other words, it's not for them. It's not for them. It's for Birotam bnehem shekamu mikivrehem, when they're going to see their sons who are going to get resurrected. Va'aretz mele'a mikama tzadikim v'chasedim. They're going to see what came out of them. Yeah. That's the second opinion. We have another opinion in the Zohar. Let's use the third opinion. Tzadikim, it says it's got nothing to do with generations. It says, you know who comes out first? Righteous people. Yeah, righteous people come first. ואחר כך שטר בני אדם, and then everybody else. Two groups, the righteous and the rest. Yeah? בעלי התורה, the people who know Torah, אחר כך בעלי מצוות, then the people who are doing commandments. Page 6. That's the third opinion. And then we have, the Midrash brings a fourth opinion. It says it has nothing to do with being righteous or not being righteous. You know how it's going to be? Aryeh is going to be first, and I'm going to be almost last. Yeah, Reish. It's going to go according to the Aleph base, the ABC. Yeah. So it says, the Midrash says, Yakumu v'yikreu tam al shmam al pi seder Aleph base. It's going to be according to the Aleph base. Depends on what your name starts with. Whoever is with an Aleph, he's going to go first. Avraham, if you're Avraham, you're going to go first. If there's I don't know if there's any other Aleph words, but whatever, Avraham are going to be first, and then the rest.
No discrimination.
Yeah. Aval, but then the Midrash says you should know, not exactly. It says, Mi sheyesh u'midat anva yamod tchila. Before you go through the Aleph base, you can get a pass, like a quick pass. Oh. Who gets the quick pass? All the righteous people get, all the humble people, righteous people get a quick pass. They get up before the Aleph base takes place. So, okay, 4 opinions. Another thing that we're going to be discussing is where. Where is this going to happen? What do you mean, where is it going to happen? Where will this miracle happen? Will all the dead rise where they were laid to rest? Or is it all going to happen in one place? And we're going to explain what the question is. Let's see. So it says, Hen hanikbarim be'eretz Israel. It says, it doesn't matter whether you were buried in the land of Israel. הן שנקברו בחוץ לארץ, or whether you were buried in Montreal, yeah, נשמתם חוזרת לגופם בארץ ישראל. The soul is only going to return to the body when the body is in the land of Israel. So now you have a problem. How are you going to get together? How are you going to get? So you see? So let's see. In Ketubot it actually says how. אמר רבי אלעזר, רבי אלעזר says, מתים שבחוץ לארץ אינם חיים לעתיד לבוא. It says the dead people that are buried outside of the land of Israel, they're not going to be part of the resurrection of the dead. It says, why am I saying it? So it says, שנאמר, because it says, ונתתי צבי בארץ חיים. I gave glory in the land that's alive. So it says, what's tzvi? I think in English, tzvi is glory. Yeah? So it says, ארץ שצביוני רצוני בה. It says, a land that I want. Yeah, tzvi means a land that I love. My land, in other words, God's land. That's the land of the living. מתי החיים, only the land that I love, the dead people that are buried in it, they're going to become resurrected. שאין צביוני, but the land that is not my beloved land, anything outside of the borders of the land of Israel, חוץ לארץ, אין מתי החיים. Their dead people are not going to get resurrected. That's according to whom? Rabbi Elazar. ולדעת רבי אלעזר, and immediately the Gemara is going to say, hey, excuse me, what Rabbi Elazar? Rabbi Elazar, you actually believe your words? You actually believe what you're saying? וכי צדיקים שבחוץ לארץ אינם חיים בתחיית המתים? Rabbi Elazar, you really think that all the righteous people that are buried outside of the land of Israel are never going to get resurrected? Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you're actually holding? So Amar Rabbi Ela, Rabbi Ela, you didn't understand Rabbi Elazar. He says he didn't say that. So he says Rabbi Ela is going to explain what Rabbi Elazar said. Amar Rabbi Ela, it says, על ידי גלגול שעצמותיהם מתגלגלות ממקום קבורתם. You know what's going to happen? Their bones are going to roll all the way from the resting place עד שמגיעות לארץ ישראל. And these bones are going to roll until they're going to get to the land of Israel. ושם הם חיים. And once they get into the borders of Israel, then the neshama is going to get into them. In other words, they're not going to become form, flesh again, until they're not going to get in live and resurrected out of the land. They're going to, the bones have to go through, and then they're going to get resurrected. So this is the whole discussion in the Gemara. But people are not going to like the discussion. People didn't like this idea. Says why? They say they have a proof that this is not true. Hiksha Rabbi Abba Salarabba. So Rabbi Abba Salarabba going to give us a question now. He says, I don't like this explanation because I have a question. What's the question? Gilgul Tzadikim. It says you're going to get all the bones of the righteous people from all over the world rolling all around. Halot tzaru lahem. Says this is it's painful. It's not just painful, it's degrading. It's painful, it's degrading, it's embarrassing. It says, well, you think all the righteous people, they're going to go through this embarrassment like this? So Amar Abaye says, it's not going to be so painful, it's not going to be so embarrassing. Says, how? So Abaye explains, Mechilot naasot lahem bakarka. It says, you're going to have, tunnels are going to be made underground, ודרך שם הם עוברים לארץ, and they're going to travel through these tunnels into the land. It's like a train, going to go straight there. And then it continues the question. It still doesn't make sense. Ne'emar. So it says, if that's true, let's try to see what's going on over here. Ne'emar sheYaakov tziva leYosef. We know the famous story that Yaakov didn't want to get buried in Egypt. So he told Yosef, what did he tell Yosef? Unesatani, it says, carry me, mimitzrayim, from Egypt. Ukvartani bekvurotam, and you're going to bury me in the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, in the cave of Avraham and Yitzchak. So Amar hechacham Karna, so the sage Karna said about this story, yesh sod badavar. You have to look deep into the story. There's some conclusions that we can deduce from this story. It says, what's the conclusion? והוא יודע היה יעקב אבינו שצדיק גמור היה. Yaakov Avinu knew that he was completely righteous. Right? He didn't have a thought that maybe he's not a righteous person. He knew he was righteous. So what was he scared? Why was he afraid? If he's completely righteous, he's going to get resurrected. He's going to go to Eretz Israel. What are you scared for? It's not going to be embarrassing. We already said there's no embarrassment. There's nothing. So you're going to travel. The train, going to Eretz Israel, and then you're going to get alive. What are you scared of? Why didn't he want it? Obviously, Yaakov was scared of something. Maybe, so some people say, maybe if he was afraid he wasn't righteous, he says that cannot be. Yaakov for sure knew he was righteous. He wasn't scared of that. שצדיק גמור היה, ואם מתים שבחוץ לארץ חיים, and here comes the question. If he knows that the dead people that are buried outside of the land of Israel are still going to get resurrected, what is he worried about? And especially, what's the problem? Hey, it's better to be buried in Israel. Yes, it's true that it's better to be buried in Israel, but you don't make that life of your sons miserable because of it. In other words, it was a miracle, and he knew it's going to be a miracle, that his son Yosef will have to fight with Paro in order to take him out. He's endangering his son, his whole nation, just to get buried. You're going to get there anyway. Why are you endangering? That's the question. You're endangering everybody because you want to get buried. It's not so important, the way we said it. So now we have said, maybe it is important. למה הטריח את בניו שיביאו אותו לארץ? Why did he go all the way? Made them everybody crazy that they're going to bring him into the land of Israel. מפני שחשש שמא לא יזכה למחילות. Only Indian, it says not everybody merits this, what do you call it? This tunnels. And he was afraid he wasn't. He said, why was he afraid that he's not going to make tunnels? He was specifically afraid. He says he wasn't afraid that his sons are going to get buried in Egypt. That he didn't care about. He says, they're going to be fine. He says, I'm going to be in trouble. In other words, what do you mean? Did he think that his sons are more righteous than him? He didn't. But you know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of that the Egyptians are going to make him into a god. And now that he's a god, maybe being an idol, then he's not going to merit to go to Israel. That's what he was scared of. So that's the way they explained it. So it says, we have a similar story. כיוצא בדבר אתה אומר, a similar story we have, וישבע יוסף את בני ישראל. Yosef had the same thing. He made the Jewish people take an oath that they're going to take him also out, if you remember it. אמר רב חנינא said, יש סוד בדבר. Also over here, look deep in the story. You're going to see something, you're going to learn something from the story. יודע היה יוסף בעצמו שצדיק גמור היה. Again, the same thing with Yaakov. He knew that he was completely righteous. ואם מתים שבחוץ לארץ חיים, and if the dead people of the land who are buried outside are going to get resurrected, why trouble everybody? Trouble everybody to take you to Israel? What's for? למה הטריח את אחיו לשאת את ארונו 400 פרסה עד שהגיע לארץ ישראל? 400 miles? Now they need to carry him? For what? So it says, again, for the same reason. Again, Yosef was also afraid that they're going to make him into a what? Into a god. And it says, somebody made into a god, maybe he's not going to be merit to have this. He was worried, maybe he's not going to have the tunnels. The Zohar continues. So we still have the tunnels. But the question is, how does the bone get all the way from outside of Israel through the tunnel? Who takes it? Who's responsible for the transformation? For the transport. So source number 9, the Zohar, on page 7 in the bottom. Mi molich haguf l'Eretz Israel. Who is the one who takes the body to the land of Israel? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Gavriel molich. Rabbi Yitzchak says, the angel Gavriel, that's his responsibility. He's going to be the minister of transportation of the bones. He's going to one who's going to be taking them to the... Next question that we have to understand of what's going on over here. We'll discuss it. We're going to discuss this. The next problem that we're going to be, it's a famous question, everybody asks it. What happens with the bodies whose souls were reincarnated in other bodies? will those bodies also be resurrected? As we know, right now, we know there are 600,000 souls, right? There are 600,000 souls. Just right, even if you go right now, there's about what? 15 million Jews right now? So how is it possible that there's only 600,000 souls? If there's 50 million Jews, there has to be at least 50 million souls. So it says no, a lot of souls can share, a lot of bodies are able to share the same soul. You can have 50, 100, 5,000, 5 million bodies only share one soul. It's possible. So also in the resurrection of the dead we're going to see, the question is which body is going to get resurrected? So let's discuss this. This is from Shar Gilgulim, the gate of reincarnation. And let's see. So it says, why does a person get reincarnated? What's the idea of reincarnation? So over there it explains, Im bapam aleph, a person come down into this world the first time, lo zacha lenataken ota hanefesh kula v'met, he had to fix his soul, and he wasn't able to perform all the commandments to actually fix all the points that the soul was supposed to be fixed. He wasn't able to go through everything. So what does he do? Lachen be'et chiyat hametim, it says, therefore at the time of the resurrection of the dead, אין לה לגוף האחד אלא אותו החלק הפרטי של הנפש אשר תיקן הוא בחיים. So it says, everybody gets resurrected. Everybody needs to get resurrected. Even if a person has been here 100 times because he didn't finish to refine his soul, he came again and again and again and again. Every time he came, that body is going to get resurrected. Because every time he came, that body did something. And that little thing that he did, the soul is in it. It needs to get resurrected. So in other words, who's going to come back? Everybody's there. Everybody, even if the same soul that reincarnated 1,000 times, is going to come, 1,000 people are going to come. Yeah. ולכן, כשמתגלגלת הנפש הזאת בגוף אחר, להשלים תיקונן, when that soul comes to another body, to complete, to fix everything else that he didn't fix in the first גלגול, בחינת החלקים של הנפש שנתקטנו בגוף הזה השני, הם לזה הגוף הבית בזמן התחייה. So it like splits. You know, the soul takes this body for this part, this body for doing, for putting on tefillin, this body for saying Krishma, this body for lighting Shabbos candles, if it's a woman. Yeah, everything, the soul gets the attribute of everybody up. ואין להקשות, the Rebbe says, you cannot ask a question, דאם כן יהיו כמה בני אדם שאין בהם אלה זה חלקים פרטיים מהנפש, לא לשלמה, so it says, so you know what's going to happen? You're going to have thousands of bodies and everybody is just a part of the soul. You don't have the whole soul. It says, no, it doesn't work this way. It's the whole soul, but this is what it refined. כי זאת למודעי, אשר כל חלק מהנפש כלול מכל החלקים. It says, every part of the soul includes all other souls in it. וכל חלק בפני עצמו הוא ציור קומה שלמה. And everybody is like one person. Take all these 1,000 people, it's like one person who's walking. Yeah? אף שמצד היותו חלק מהנפש יותר כללית, אינו לבחינה אחת. He's going to give an example. We're not going to go deep into this. It's a whole explanation about this. But he's going to give an example to just give us the idea of how actually it works. It says, וגדולה מזה מצינו. It says, we already found such a thing. It's not going to be the first time. אשר כללות כל הנשמות יחד אינם אלא נשמה אחת של אדם הראשון. You should know it already happened. It says how? Adam Arishon, the first man, had all, we are on page 9 at the top. Adam Arishon, the first man, had all the souls that exists in him. So just like that, it's one soul, another soul, but they all belong to him. So it's just like one person is walking. Think about it, just like Adam right now is walking. Adam, the first man, needs to do all the commandments. So once Adam did all the commandments, then it's the resurrection of the dead. וכמרומז במאמר רז"ל, just like the sages says, עד שהאדם הראשון מוטל גולם, it says, at the time that the first man was just mud, Hashem formed him out of mud, it says, when he was mud, something happened. It says, what happened? הראה לו הקדוש ברוך הוא כל צדיק וצדיק שעתיד לא ממנו. God showed him the soul of every righteous person that is going to arise from him. In other words, he showed it to him in him. יש שהוא תלוי בראשו של אדם. It says some people are going to be your brain. They come from your brain. And some people are going to come from your hair. You know, as we learned it in Tanya. The next question we're going to have to deal with is what will happen to those who are alive when the time for the resurrection of the dead happens? Let's say Mashiach is coming now, tonight. What happens to us? Are we going to get resurrected? We're not going to get resurrected. What's going to happen to us?
We're alive.
We're alive? Exactly. Yeah. Okay, you're right. It's going to take 40 years. But let's say 40 years gone, and what will happen to those who are alive? So let's see. So it says, the Zohar says, something's going to happen. You know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to die. It says, Ani amit ve'achaye. The Zohar says, I will kill and I will alive. עד עכשיו המוות היה מן הצד האחר. It says, until now, you know what death was? Death was bad. Until the resurrection of the dead, death was tuma, was impurity, was the worst possible thing. Didn't give you an opportunity to connect to God. That's what death did. That's until when? Until the time of Mashiach. Mikan ve'ala. But when Mashiach is going to come, what's going to happen to death? The evil part of death is going to get removed. There's not going to be evil. The death itself is not going to be bad. It says, why death is not going to be bad? Mikan ve'ala, it says, from here onwards, ani amit ve'achaye. God says, I will kill and I will enliven. What do you mean I? Just like I give life, I will give death. It's going to be as good as life. Death is going to be as good as life. מכאן שבאותו הזמן, from here we learn that at that time, when Mashiach is going to come, when the resurrection of the dead is going to start, כל אותם שלא טעמו טעם המוות, all those people who didn't taste the taste of death, ממנו יהיה להם מוות. They will get the taste of death. ויקים אותם מיד. In other words, for 1 second they will die and resurrected immediately. Die and boom. Look at this. Boom, boom. 1 second. That's right. Dead and alive. 2 seconds. Why? כדי שלא תישאר מאותה זוהמה בעולם כלל. Because God wants a new creature in the earth. He doesn't want the old creature. So the old creatures has to be destroyed. In other words, you were lived in a world that had death. So he's going to kill you, so you're going to be resurrected in a world that has no death. That's the idea behind it. ויהיה עולם חדש במעשה ידי הקדוש ברוך הוא. And now there's going to be a world without the concept of death anymore. But for that, he needed to kill all those people that were in the previous world. In the world that had death in it. Next one. The next question is page 10. How will the dead be resurrected? Next question. How will the dead be resurrected? What does it mean, how will the dead be resurrected? Are they going to be clothed or are they going to be naked? Or Bezegil, also at what age? Very good. Also what age? And another question, are they going to be healthy or are they going to be ill when they're going to be resurrected?
The guy died, he was sick.
Yeah, exactly. His liver was finished, the disc was finished, he couldn't see. Some people have no legs, have no arms, you know. An accident happened. What's going to be with these people? So, let's see in Bereshit Rabbah and what health. Bereshit Rabbah says like this. כשם שאדם הולך, כך הוא בא. It says exactly the way you left, that's the way you're going to get resurrected. הולך עיוור, הוא בא עיוור. If you went blind, you're going to come back blind. חירש, בא חירש. You went deaf, you're going to come back deaf. אילם בא אילם. You went mute, you died mute, you're going to come back mute. ולמה? It says why? Why is God going to do such a thing? So it says, למה כשם שהאדם הולך כך הוא בא? Why is this rule that the way you left, that's the way you're going to come back? So he says, because you don't want people to say something. Don't you want people to say? שלא יאמרו, you don't want people to say, כשהם חיים לא ריפן. Because otherwise, you know what people are going to say? When these people were alive, God didn't heal them. Maybe he didn't have the whatever. משמתו, but when they died, he's going to bring them back alive? That's not such a big deal. He should have healed them, you know when? In the previous life, before. משמתו ריפן הקדוש ברוך הוא ואחר כך הבידם. So he says, after they died, God healed them and then he brought them back. And then you know what people are going to say? I'm not sure that this is my grandmother. How do I know it's my grandmother? It's just somebody that looks like my grandmother. But it's not my grandmother, I remember her. This is not my grandmother. This is not the guy. The guy was blind. They wouldn't recognize the people who are coming back. דומה שאינם אותם אלו אחרים מהם. People are going to think this is a fake. He just brought, a clone. God made clones. People who look like the old guys. But it's not the other guy. It's a different guy. It's not the same soul. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, so God says, you're not going to be able to say this. You know what I'm going to do? אם כן יעמדו כמו שהלכו, says I'm going to return them exactly the same way. Now, I'm going to give you a week, whatever, to see them, and then I'm going to heal them. So that you're going to know the one that left, these are the one that become healed. ואחר כך אני מרפא אותה. Only then I will heal them. That's your question about health. Next one. The Zohar says, source 13.
No, but you didn't say what age.
Oh, we did. I just didn't explain. Age, what is age? What does age come from? It comes from what? Age comes from what? From death. In other words, when it says, the Gemara says, when does a baby start to die? When does a child start to die? When he's born. Age itself is death. So the people are going to come back old, 100 years old, whatever they are when they passed away, blind, whatever, but then they're going to healed. Healed means there's no more death, which means it's going to go back to the age of 20, full strength, whatever the age this animal, this creature is supposed to be. So everybody is going to look 18, 19, I don't know, whatever, or depends what the greatest age there is. It's the question, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, that's the age. Probably an adult, I would say 19, 20, 21, 22, somewhere around there. Okay. בזמן שישראל יקומו מן העפר, at the time that the Jewish people are going to come, get resurrected, כמה חיגרים וכמה סומים יהיו בהם. There's going to be crippled people and the blind people. ואז הקדוש ברוך הוא יאיר להם אותה השמש לרפא בה. And then the sun is going to come up, and then the sun is going to heal them. Like it says in Talmud Bavli, source number 14, הקדוש ברוך הוא מוציא חמה מן הארתיקה, God is going to take out the sun from its sheath, וצדיקים מתרפאים בה, and the righteous are going to be healed with it. Another thing, what about the clothing? How are you going to come? The clothing. So it says, כשם שהוא הולך, page 11 at the top, כשם כשהוא הולך לבוש, כך הוא בא לבוש. It says, just like a person departs with garments, tachrichim, he will also return in garments. So it says, but not garments that you think. They're not the tachrichim. I'll tell you the story. It's a story. The story goes like this. Everybody knows King Saul. So King Saul was a king, and in his time he had a lot of problems with the Philistines. You know, like today, unfortunately. And he was fighting with the Philistines constantly. You know, and Shmuel Hanavi, Shmuel the prophet, was his mentor. But Shmuel died like 6 months after King Saul appeared. So, but King Saul was a king about 2 years, only about 2 years. After that, so 6 months after he became king, he had no mentor anymore. So he wanted to connect to Shmuel, to the prophet of Samuel. He wanted to connect to him. So he went to the high priest and he asked in the Urim and Tumim of the high priest, but there was no communication, zero communication. King Saul also made sure that there's not going to be idol worship in the world. Especially the prevailing idol worship at the time was necromancer. Now, if you know what a necromancer is a person who's able to bring back dead people. So, yeah, Baal, that's right, Baal. So he was able to create the... Now, when a necromancer brings back dead people, it works funnily. How does it work? First of all, you hear the person who's asking the question. He hears the person, but the Baal, the necromancer, he sees the person. So you hear him, but he sees him. Also, if it's a regular person who's asking the question, the necromancer will see the image upside down. But if it's a king, the necromancer will see the image the right way up. So King Saul wanted to communicate it with the prophet Samuel. So he couldn't do it through the sages, he couldn't do it through the Beit HaMikdash. So he knew that there was this one woman who was a great necromancer, but there was a rule now that whoever's going to do this idol worship, the king is going to kill them. So what did the king do? The king dressed himself in a garment that doesn't look like the king, and he came to her, and he told her, I need to talk to the prophet Samuel. Do me a favor. So she says, I can't do it to you because the king said whoever ever going to do this idol worship is going to kill. So I cannot do it to you. So he says, don't worry, I'll make sure that you're not going to die. So she started bringing all this King Samuel. So he saw King Samuel, but he didn't believe he heard King Samuel. He had a whole conversation with King Samuel. So he asked him, how come you didn't answer me? So he said, you should have understood by the fact that that I didn't answer you, that I don't want to talk to you, that you don't deserve it anymore, and that's the end of you. You're going to get killed in the war in the Philistine. That's that's actually what happened. He went to the war with the Philistine and he got killed. That's exactly what happened. But you should have guessed already. That's the thing. You shouldn't have went to her. That's what he said. Now she immediately, he asked her though, because she's seeing the image, and he wasn't sure that this is King Saul. So he told me, describe to me what he's wearing. And she described to me what he was wearing. Not what he was buried in. What he was usually wearing in everyday life. And that's why she described him. So let's look inside. And by the way, when she started seeing the image, she saw the image the right side up. So immediately she said, you the king, you tricked me, you're going to kill me. So he says, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. Yeah, okay. So the story goes like this. Mimi ata lamed, so from where do you see that you get born with the clothes? Mishmuel, you see it from from the prophet Shmuel, שראה אותו שאול, that King Saul saw him. מה הוא אומר לאישה? He says, what does he say to the woman? What does King Saul say to that woman? She says, מה תארו? He says, describe him to me. Describe him, because only you see him, I hear him. ותאמר, and she said, איש זקן, he says, an old man, והוא עוטה מעיל, and he is wearing a מעיל, like a jacket, a cloak. שכך היה לבוש. This was, and she described the way he was dressed. שנאמר, ומעיל קטון תעשה לו עמו. This is the jacket, this is the cloak that his mother made to him. So in today's verse it continues to say, אמר רבי לבניו, Rabbi said to his sons, מעטו בתכריכים. It says you don't have to put a lot of clothing on a dead person. Just simple clothing. Why? שעתידים צדיקים שיעמדו בלבושיהם. Because they don't need it. They're going to come out with the garments they used to wear when they were alive. Mashma, which means, מעטו בתכריכים שעתידים צדיקים שלא יעמדו בתכריכים אלא בלבושיהם החיים. They're going to get raised up with their old clothing anyway. Even though it's not buried with them, God is going to make sure. Next. The next question is, how exactly is the body, from what part of the body, how it's going to get wrinkled? See, in the old times, nobody believed such a thing. Today, you can actually do it. You can take any DNA and you can actually, maybe not They do it today. They did it with sheep. They can do it with men also. They're just not doing it. They probably did it. They just don't tell us about it. But in the old time, it was something people didn't even think about. And so it says, Amar Rabbi Chia. So Rabbi Chia says, Velo od, says not only that, אלא שאותו גוף שהיה יקום. It's the same body that was, it's going to come alive. משמע שכתוב, יחיו מתיך, and this is why it says, your dead are going to become alive. ולא כתוב יברא. It doesn't mean that Hashem is going to create them anew. No, it's the same body. The same body will become alive. משמע שהם בריות אבל חיחיו. It means it's the same body exactly that's going to come alive. Just like the same body right now manufactures new cell, it's going to start manufacturing new cells. That old body is going to start manufacturing new cells. Page 12. שהרי עצם אחת נשארת מן הגוף, we know that there's one bone that stays from within the body, תחת האדמה, underneath, even though the person is buried, והיא לא נרכבת, and it doesn't get rotted, it doesn't get destroyed, ולא תבלה באפר לעולמים, it will never get disintegrated. ובאותו זמן הקדוש ברוך הוא מרכך אותו, at the time of the resurrection of the dead, God is going to make this bone soft, ויעשה אותו כמו שאור שבעיסה. It's going to become like dough. ותעלה ותתפשט לארבע פינות, and that's going to start rising. Just like dough rises, it's going to start rising. It's going to like bread, like it goes up, it's going to start rising. וממנה ישתכלל הגוף כל עבריו, so it will rise, and the entire body is going to rise with it. It's going to just like bread. והקדוש ברוך הוא ייתן ברוח אחר כך, and then God is going to give him a spirit. אמר לו רבי אלעזר כך הוא, ובו ראה אותה עצם במה התרככה בטל. It says how it's going to happen, in what's going to be the material that's going to make it soft, in a special dew. שכתוב כי טל אורות טליך וגומר. It says for a dew of light is your dew. The Rebbe says, page 12 in the bottom, על דבר עצם זה ומקומו. It says where is that exactly is this bone? So there's two opinions. It says it's in the edge of the spine. So there's the two opinions. Some says edge of the spine means the top of the spine. Some says edge of the spine means the bottom of the spine. So יש אומרים שהוא במקום קשר של תפילין. Some says it is the place where you put the tefillin right over here, the last one of the spine. ויש אומרים שהוא עצם התחתון שבשדרה. And some says it's the lowest part of the spine. So it's either the top or the bottom. The next question that we'll have to deal with, what type of life will be experienced after the resurrection? So let's say there's a resurrection now, tonight, 40 years from now, like we say. By the way, the 40 years doesn't have to be 40 years. Yeah? It says in other places that it could take up to 40 years, but it can also happen immediately. But
creation of time is going to stay. It's going to
yeah. But we're going to see it's going to be problematic now. What type of lives will we experience after the resurrection? העולם הבא, אחר שיחיו המתים, the next world after the dead are going to become alive, אין בו לא אכילה ולא שתייה, like the Rambam says, there's no eating, there's no drinking, לא פריה ולא רבייה, no children, ולא משא ומתן, there's not going to be business, everybody is going to have everything, you don't need to have business. לא קנאה ולא שנאה, לא תחרות, no jealousy, no competition. So what people are going to do? Sit with their iPhones all day long, there's nothing to do. אלא, צדיקים יושבים ועטרותיהם בראשיהם, the righteous are going to sit with their crowns on their head, ונהנים מזיו השכינה. Everybody is going to be sunbathing in God's glory. It's going to be God's presence. It's like sitting in the sun of Hashem. ואינם חוזרים לעפרם וקיימים לעולם. They're not going to return to dust. They're going to remain forever. והנה לכאורה, but he says that's problematic. כיוון שבתחיית המתים אין שם אכילה ושתייה. It says, didn't we just learn that there's no eating and drinking? What does it mean there's no eating? Right now, in order to be alive, in order to live, you need the energy from animals, from plants. You need the energy in order to be alive. Then, you know what's going to be the life? Your life. God is going to be your life. You don't need, the energy of God is going to be your life, going to give you life. You don't need other animals or other plants to give you life. You wanna?
You're going to be like an angel in a book.
That's right. That's right. The body itself will get life from God. לא יהיה סטייקים, בדיוק. No steaks. הרי מה שאמרו, the steaks are going to be light steaks. They're going to be made out of light.
Man.
Yeah, they're going to be made out of light. Yeah.
Spiritual food.
הרי מה שאמרו רז"ל, what did it says, according to this, now we have a big question. What's the big question? שלעתיד לבוא, הקדוש ברוך הוא עושה סעודה לצדיקים. It says, God is going to make a big feast for the righteous people. Yeah? It says, what is this big feast when we know nobody's eating? Nobody needs to eat and there's a big feast? It says, ורוב המכריע של המפרשים ביארו מאמר רז"ל אלא כפשוטן בסעודה גופנית. So most of the commentary says this is going to be actually a meal. At the resurrection of the dead, God is going to start with a big meal. What's that going to talk about? Page 14. Let's look, this is מסכת פסחים. So it says, עתיד הקדוש ברוך הוא לעשות סעודה לצדיקים. God is going to make a big feast to the righteous people. ביום שיגמול חסדו לזרעו של יצחק. In the day of the resurrection of the dead. לאחר שאוכלים ושותים. So it says, what's going to happen? After they eat and drink, נותנים לו לאברהם אבינו כוס של ברכה. Who is going to get to do the כוס של ברכה? אברהם אבינו. ואומר להם, איני מברך. But he tells them, I'm not going to do it. Why? שיצא ממני ישמעאל, because I had Ishmael unfortunately come out of me. אומר לו ליצחק, so Abraham tells יצחק, תול וברך, says you take and make a blessing. אומר להם, יצחק says, איני מברך, שדוני מעשיו, says I can't, Esav came out of me, I'm not going to. אומר לו יעקב, so יצחק says, יעקב, you go bless. תול וברך, you take it and bless. אומר להם, איני מברך, it says I can't either. So it says, why can't you? שנשאתי שתי אחיות, because I married two sisters. It's against the Torah. שעתידת תורה לא אוסרם עליי, that the Torah says you're not allowed to. אומר לו למשה, so they told Moshe, Moshe, come on, take the cup and bless. תול וברך, take the cup and bless. אומר להם, איני מברך, he told them, I cannot bless. שלא זכיתי להיכנס לארץ ישראל, it says, I never even went, I was never even in the land of Israel. Forget about die. Yeah? לא בחיי ולא בהיותי. I wasn't there alive, nor was it in my death. אומר לו ליהושע, so they told ליהושע, תול וברך, it says, you go and bless. אומר להם, איני מברך, it says, even I can't make a blessing. It says, why? שלא זכיתי לבן. It says, I never merited to do the mitzvah of פרו be fruitful and multiply. I only had girls. You only had girls, Yeshua. דכתיב יהושע בן נון, it says, Yeshua the son of Nun, נון בנו של יהושע בנו. It says, in other words, it ends over there in Sefer Yamim. It doesn't say that there's no continuation because he had no son after that. His daughters got married to somebody else and it ended. Omer lo, so who's going to bench in the end? Who's going to make the kos shel bracha in the end? Omer lo le David, so they told to King David, Tol ubarech, take and bless. Omer lahem, ani avarech, he says, I am going to bless. Veli na'el avarech, and it's befitting that I will bless. He says, why? שנאמר כוס ישועות אשא. This is what we say, כוס ישועות אשא, ובשם השם אקרא. I will lift upon the cup of salvation and I will call upon the name of the Lord. What's the question?
I said, why David didn't say, I can't. I had a Ben Sorer.
That's not the problem. Yeah, but that's not the problem. But he was a Jew. He was a Jew. Didn't have a problem. And he did tshuva. אמר רבי יוחנן, רבא סדר רבי יוחנן, עתיד הקדוש ברוך הוא לעשות סעודה לצדיקים מבשרו של לוויתן. It says God is going to make the feast from the flesh of the Leviathan. והשאר מחלקים אותו. And what about the rest? You cannot eat so much. It's going to be huge. Miles and miles of fish, of this Leviathan. It says, what are you going to do with those? It says, the rest, עושים בו סחורה בשוקי ישראל. It says, in the rest, you'll have enough food for the rest. You can make other stuff, not food, because food is not eaten, in the markets of Israel. ואמר רבא, אמר רבי יוחנן.
It's not kosher.
Oh, it's going to be kosher, because it's going to be shechted by what?
By Kadosh Baruch Hu.
We'll see. It actually, we might learn about it one day, but we don't have time today. ואמר רבא, אמר רבי יוחנן, Rabbi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, עתיד הקדוש ברוך הוא לעשות סוכה לצדיקים מאורו של לוויתם. God is going to make a huge sukkah for all the righteous people from the skin of the Leviathan. Zacha, it says, who's going to enter the sukkah? So it says, those people who merited, were righteous, osim lo sukkah, they can go into the sukkah. Lo zacha, a little bit less people who are not so righteous, osim lo tziltzal, they're going to make for him a necklace. They're going to get a necklace. Velo zacha, osim lo anak. If he didn't merit, you're going to make a kamiyah. איך קוראים לזה קמיה? Like an amulet. לא זכה, עושים לו ענק, עושים לו קמיה. Sorry, צלצל means covering. So it's either, so there's 4 stages. So there's a sukkah, a covering, whatever covering means, like a mitriya, let's call it. Yeah, like a covering. Then there's a necklace, and then there's an amulet. Yeah. והשאר, and what about the rest? But you still have miles and miles of Leviathan. What are you going to do with it? פורסו הקדוש ברוך הוא על חומות ירושלים. God is going to put his skin on the walls of ירושלים. וזיבו מבהיק מסוף העולם ועד סופו. And it's going to be so shining that you can see the light from the edge of the world. If you're in Australia, you'll be able to see that the sky is from this light. שנאמר והלכו גויים לאורך ומלכים לנוגה זרחך. It will shine in the heavens. It will look like there's a light over there. But the question is, you still don't eat? So what's that about? So the Rebbe says, בעולם הבא, it's true that in the world to come you won't need to eat. There's not going to be a necessity for it. לא יצטרכו לאכול בשביל לקיים את הגוף. You won't need to eat in order to be alive. But you will want to eat to enter, to get the mitzvah into you. To you to become the mitzvah. והאכילה ושתייה יהיו עבור תכלית אחרת. The eating and drinking is not going to be there in order to enliven you. It's going to give you something else that we will learn some other time.